Hey, so today I thought I would do a really quick video looking at the exposure accuracy of the new Polaroid i2 camera compared to the MiNT SL670 X Ming edition, which is the latest, greatest new one, the Type I. And what I was curious about is just how accurate the in-camera meter would be. Once again, the meters might be accurate, but the film, is going to be changing from time to time. But I wanted to see how the meter in both cameras responded to the latest, greatest batch of Polaroid films. And I also wanted to look at, if I then handheld meter it, how accurate the camera system would be with a manual adjustment put into place, and then what would be a tweaked exposure. So let's take a look. What you can see here right now in the first set is the 670 with a normal camera meter setting and the i2 set on auto. And what you see is that the i2 is really overexposing the image quite a bit. And the 670X is also underexposing the image a little bit, but it's interesting. I think it's different than that even. On the 670 by MiNT, it has a tendency of looking at and being very sensitive to the highlight values. So if you have any kind of bright sky in a scene, like you do in this one, this is on a very overcast, very gray day. So you also sort of see the funky color of the Polaroids. That's just because the color temperature and the lighting was really out there. But what you can see is the 670 is doing everything it can to not pop the highlight. It's keeping those highlight values. Whereas the i2 camera is overexposing the image absolutely by 2/3 of a stop. So then when I put my handheld light meter and I decided to take a second set of exposures, this time metering manually at f8. So now if we take a look at those two, you can see that both of them are pretty similar. Color balance, sharpness, everything is really close. And that's why I think if you look at a lot of the reviews that have been done of the i2 camera, so many people are talking about always setting it through manual metering. And this is because they just want to be more accurate. If you're concerned about wasting Polaroids and you have an i2, I would seriously consider doing a manual exposure for it. It just sort of seems to hit it perfect every time. So then what I decided to do was to take the cameras and say, could I put in a correction value just automatically when it's on auto mode, and would that solve the problem? So let's take a look at those two. So what you see here on the first one is the 670 X by MiNT, and what you see is by lightening the wheel, I was not using the time machine, which is I've talked about in previous posts, which helps control shutter speed and give you full manual control. On this particular one, I wasn't using the time machine, and I just want a little bit brighter, like a little over a half a line brighter, and it's actually pretty darn good. On the i2, I did the standard -2/3 compensation, which seemed to really hit the spot. So my rule of thumb would be on the i2, when I'm out shooting, on a bright sunny day, if there's sky and bright light, I would always go -2/3 on that camera for shooting. On an overcast day, all that kind of stuff, I would still underexpose it by -2/3. The only time I would leave that camera at the neutral setting, at the 0 setting for exposure compensation, would be if I was indoors or something like that, or in really flat, even lighting, I might do it as well. But indoors, it seems to nail it pretty good. Outdoors, it always seems to need a -2/3. Regarding the MiNT camera, my basic feeling is, because MiNT went through these cameras and they rebuilt the entire circuit board, the metering system and everything, but it can't take into account changes that Polaroid is producing in their film. Unlike the i2, which can be upgraded through firmware and all those settings can be changed, the MiNT camera can't. So if I was working with the MiNT camera, there's two ways that I would do it for accuracy. Outdoors, if it is any kind of sun whatsoever, any kind of sky, any kind of brightness showing up in my frame, I would automatically overexpose by one line on that camera. Indoors, I'd probably still overexpose just a hair. I find that when you're not using the time machine, it needs that. When you're using the time machine at the A600, which is the auto setting for the 600 speed film, I still find that it wants to be overexposed a little tiny bit to be proper. And that just sort of seems to get me the best exposures. But as you can see from these two cameras, they both need a tweak to expose proper in different types of lighting. Thank you very much for listening. Can't wait to hear your thoughts. Now go shoot some film.